Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hello, hello. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are bringing in more people. More people are joining in, so we'll just give it one more minute before we get started. It's populating. I see Yaman Al-Taha, mashallah. Some people I know, some people I don't. This is great. This is a good community. Don't show this again. Okay. We are ready to start. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulullah. Welcome everyone to this workshop, travel advisory workshop. And when we were putting this together, we were kind of discussing and debating, is this highlighting the fear factor within our community? Or is it just, are we just educating people about issues that are relevant and happening? Because we do not want to create an atmosphere of fear, as if that we should be scared. No, it is about being aware of our rights, being cognizant of the environment around us. We receive more complaints from people coming into the country than probably any other complaint, with the exception of discrimination, especially employment, workplace discrimination, which tells us that actually our community is concerned about this issue. Obviously, it is an issue that where the Customs and Borders Protection, the agents who stamp your passport when you come into the country, are abusing their power. They are abusing our community, and they are overreaching by asking people questions about their faith, about their politics, about their worship, about their charity giving. I mean, really ridiculous questions. And I know I'm going to leave it here to Attorney Bilal Ahmed, and I'll introduce him in a second. But I believe that being aware of what are your rights, and we're being asked, being aware of your rights will allow you and empower you to respond in a positive and constructive and meaningful way to this abuse or this overreach by CBP, the Customs and Borders Protection, the people who stamp your passport at the airport. I'm going to stop here, and I want to introduce the attorney for this workshop. And I'm going to introduce him in a special way. Other than that, he is the attorney who's going to present. You're going to see him very often, and more often than you probably care to, but it's all going to be good because he is the incoming staff attorney at CAIR-Ohio in Columbus, Cincinnati, and Dayton. He is our own. He's from Columbus, moved away and now moving back, and we are thrilled to have Bilal Ahmed with us. He has, other than he has his Juris Doctorate and as an attorney, and he's a barred attorney in the state of Ohio, but he also has a master's degree in Islamic studies and an undergrad in Middle Eastern, I believe, and Islamic studies as well. So he is all-rounded kind of attorney, knowing the law of the faith and the law of the land, and that is, I believe, is a very, very good combination, badly needed in our community. So without further ado, I present you with Brother Bilal Ahmed.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Brother Khalid, for that nice little kickoff there. I would like to apologize for the awkward angle here. My laptop camera was not working, so I've had to use my phone camera, so if it seems a bit wayward, my apologies. And also, if I appear a bit sluggish this evening, I am getting over a very severe illness. So if you see me drinking a lot of water, it's because I'm trying to stay hydrated. But inshallah, it shouldn't be too much of a hindrance. So what are we going to get into today? If I was really just going to give you a Know Your Rights workshop and just talk about your rights, I could finish it in 1 minute and 10 bullet points. But we're going to go a little bit more in depth than that. We're going to talk about what major agencies are involved in immigration enforcement. We're going to talk about different scenarios in which you can encounter immigration enforcement in the US. We're going to talk about what happens if you go into detention. And then we're going to talk about what goes on at the airport. A lot of this will be geared towards, by nature, people who are not citizens, simply because non-citizens are the ones who are going to be encountering immigration enforcement more likely than not when at the airport or out in the public or at the workforce. We will be touching on citizens as well, but most of this will be geared towards, again, non-citizens, simply because of the nature of this area of the law. So let's go ahead and move on here. Okay. So, yes, you have rights. So whether you are a US citizen or not, you have important rights when interacting with law enforcement. And the purpose of this presentation is to educate you about your rights so that you can be prepared and take measures to protect yourself and your family. If you do not have immigration documents or papers, let's say you're someone who's in the US with dubious status, it is even more important that you know your rights in the event of an encounter with law enforcement, but specifically law enforcement agencies involving immigration. So before we dive into some of the more details here, what are your rights when interacting with law enforcement generally? So all people in the U.S., citizens and non-citizens alike, have certain rights under the U.S. Constitution and other laws. So you have the right to refuse search. You have the right to refuse immigration or law enforcement to search your person, your car, or your home. You have the right to remain silent. If you want to exercise this right, you must express that to law enforcement. Again, I'll explain what that looks like in more detail later. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to speak with an attorney before answering any questions, and you do not have to sign anything you do not understand. And as a non-US citizen, you have the right to call the consulate of your home country. US enforcement officials must allow you to contact your consulate. We're going to get into how these kind of come up in very specific situations, but these are the general rights that are enshrined in the Constitution and in other federal law that citizens and non-citizens alike have access to. So part one here, overview of immigration enforcement. So well, oftentimes when we talk about Know Your Rights workshops, people simply want to know their rights, but I really believe that's only half of the education that's required. You also have to understand the system of governance itself. In this particular case, excuse me, the immigration system in the U.S. And we have a number of different agencies that interact with one another in the immigration context. And I think it's important for all of us to understand what those agencies are and what they do. So what are the main immigration enforcement agencies? So they all operate under the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. I'm sure we're all very familiar with this after 9/11, created by President Bush. So the one you guys have probably seen the most is USCIS. And I apologize here, there's a bit of a typo. On the far right, it should say ICE. And in the middle, it should say USCIS. But let's just focus on the middle one here. So USCIS, they're the ones that process your applications for citizenship, your green card, for many of you that came here as non-citizens and applied for your green card, then applied for citizenship, or you married someone from overseas and you brought someone over. This is all done by USCIS. And so they're not really involved in enforcement procedures in as much as they refer cases to ICE if they feel like an application has gone awry or there's no basis for it. And on the left-hand side here, we have Customs and Border Protection, with Brother Khalid had mentioned earlier. These are the people that you see at airports. You see them at seaports and other ports of entry into the United States, like the land borders as well. They have the ability to detain you. They do look like regular kind of police officers. They do have sidearms. They do have weapons. They have vests and so on and so forth. And they also refer cases to ICE. Now, again, on the far right-hand side here, it should say ICE. It should not say USCIS. ICE is the most famous now probably of all these agencies. They're the ones getting the most airtime in the media, given President Trump's more concerted effort to remove immigrants from the United States. That's exactly ICE's job. They are the enforcement wing of the Department of Homeland Security with regards to immigration. So they are the ones going out, detaining people, placing them in detention, and then deporting them from the United States. They are also the ones that I guess you could say make you alert that you have to go to court. So, for example, they're going to issue your notice to appear. So if you are no longer authorized to stay in the United States or you entered illegally, they are going to be the ones that issue a notice to appear saying, hey, you're not allowed to stay here. These are the reasons you can't stay here. This is your court date, and you have to show up on this date. If you do not show up on this date, you're going to be ordered deported in absentia. So those are the three main federal immigration agencies. Now you also have other federal and local law enforcement agencies. So, for example, ICE will work in conjunction with the Social Security Agency, the FBI, U.S. Marshals, so on and so forth, with regards to the apprehension and deportation of immigrants in the United States. But those other agencies I just mentioned, their primary job isn't obviously immigration enforcement, but they will refer things over to ICE if they feel that a certain individual should be within ICE's custody. All right, so excuse me. Immigration officers come in all different shapes and sizes, and they have all different funny acronyms and such. So we can take a look at a few of them here. So on the top left, we see CBP. Those are the people that are letting you in to the United States when you're coming in. They're taking your fingerprints, they're taking your pictures. The ones asking you a few questions. Hey, where'd you go? What'd you do? So on and so forth. And then in the picture right next to it, again, you have ICE agents. Again, these are the agents involved in the active apprehension and deportation of immigrants in the United States. You have police ERO, which is technically I guess you could say, the deportation branch of ICE, that they are technically the ones within ICE who are actually doing the rounding up operations. I know oftentimes we just see people with the ICE vests on, like you can see in the second picture here on the top in the center. But these guys are also probably ERO. They just don't have the ERO logo on them. You also have police HSI, which is also an agency under the Department of Homeland Security, which is also involved in immigration, but they're more involved in the criminal side. So they're not the ones transnational criminal issues. And so they're not normally the ones you're seeing running around your community trying to pick people up, but they do get involved sometimes with ICE. And you can see here that these are what ICE vehicles look like. So on the bottom, in the center here, you have an ICE truck, and then you have an ICE car there as well. And they just look like regular, almost police cruisers. Okay, so understanding immigration enforcement, priorities, jurisdiction, and counsel. So immigrants with past convictions and undocumented immigrants are the most at risk of deportation. So if you are traveling and you do have a past conviction, or let's say you are traveling and you're undocumented, you are at a high risk of deportation. That's not to say that you can't travel or that you shouldn't but you should be aware of how your own criminal history can impact your ability to travel or your ability to enter the United States. You should consult with an immigration attorney regarding the specifics of your case, because no two cases are the same. Immigrants facing deportation may be detained anywhere in the U.S. If you have some kind of immigration issue, it doesn't matter if that immigration issue happened at an airport in Ohio, or whether Columbus or Cleveland or Cincinnati. That issue could follow you to a different state, because immigration is federal law, and so it's federal jurisdiction, and the issue will follow you everywhere. And so it doesn't matter if you go to a different state and try to fly from a different airport, you'll have the exact same problem over there. This last point is very important for non-citizens. I think really focus on this. There's no recognized right to government-appointed counsel if you're facing deportation. To access counsel, you must find on your own and cover at your own expense your attorney's fees. However, you do have access to counsel for criminal charges, even if you cannot afford one. So basically what's going on here is that we've all heard that you have a right to an attorney. This only really applies in cases where there are criminal charges against you. Immigration infractions are not considered criminal charges, and so you don't have a right to an attorney. So if you are facing deportation, or you do have an issue at the airport, you don't have a right to an attorney. You have to contact one, and you have to pay for one out of your own pocket. Now, that's an important distinction here, because many non-citizens who end up having immigration infractions think they are entitled to an attorney when they go to court. But when they go to court, there's no attorney waiting for them. Then they have to go pro se. And here at the bottom here, you see the logo for the Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR as we call it. And they're the ones that handle all immigration cases in the United States. So what's the general code of conduct when dealing with law enforcement? And this really applies to really any law enforcement, state or federal, but we'll talk specifically about the state of Ohio here in a second. Do not lie or give false names or documents, especially if you're a non-citizen. This could have very serious ramifications on your ability to apply for a green card, to re-enter the United States, to apply for citizenship later on. Do not give any information about your immigration status to any government agent without consulting an attorney. They have no right to that information. Do not tell the government agent what country you come from. They have, again, no right to that. So in the state of Ohio, you do have to give your name, date of birth, and address. And make sure to use your full name with government agents. So for example, if you have two surnames, or if you have, let's say, two middle names, be sure to provide both of them. If you use a false name, your family may be unable to locate you later. And again, I'll talk in a little bit more detail later. If you are detained by ICE or by some immigration enforcement officer, there is a way to locate you online, actually, through a government website. But But if the name is incorrect, then no one will be able to locate you. Sorry, my finger swiped the wrong key here. Okay, so what do you do if you encounter ICE in public? So let's say you're going to the airport here, and let's say you're walking to the airport, or you're walking from your car to the airport, and ICE approaches you. You would simply ask them, "Am I free to go?" If they say yes, you can simply just walk away. If no, you say, "I want to use my right to remain silent, and I want to speak to a lawyer." And it's very critical that you evoke this right as clearly as possible. If English isn't your first language, it might be to your benefit to memorize this statement. If English isn't a language you speak at all, there are also what we call red cards, which you can download from the internet, which have your rights written in English, and then in your native language as well, whether it's Urdu or Arabic or Pashto or Dari. You can find them online. They're pretty ubiquitous now. You can simply carry them in your pocket. If you encounter agents like this, you can simply hand them this card, and they should understand what you're trying to do. Remember, even in your workplace, you have a right to remain silent as well. So do not answer questions about your place of birth, your criminal or your immigration history. You do not have to line up according to your immigration status, right? If someone starts to search your bag, simply say, "I do not consent to the search," and never say that you're an American citizen unless you are, because again, if you're not an American citizen and you're a green card holder, or you're just on a visitor visa and you claim to be a U.S. citizen, this can be a serious impediment to you applying for a green card or getting citizenship later. And again, when it comes to consenting to searches, um, you want to say as clearly as possible, "I do not consent to the search," and you should never, under any circumstance, physically resist an officer. If they simply want to seize your bag or they want to grab your belongings, do not resist them, because it will make the situation worse. If they're wearing some kind of body cam and you state vocally that "I do not consent," you've created a legal record which can help you later on. Okay, so let's say you're driving to the airport and then the ICE pulls you over. So stop your vehicle again as soon as possible. Stay in your car, turn on your interior lights, open your windows, and place your hands on the wheel. You want to come off as non-threatening as possible. You want to show your license, registration, and insurance if you have them. Again, do not show false documents. In particular, if you are a non-citizen, this could have very serious ramifications in your ability to apply for more permanent status later in the United States. The driver, along with the passengers, they all have the right to remain silent. Generally, the police cannot search your car without a warrant. There are quite a few exceptions here, which merit a presentation on their own. I don't have time to get into them here, but generally, they cannot search your car without a warrant. Do not consent to police searching your vehicle. Again, you should state as vocally as possible, "I do not consent to any search of my vehicle." If you have documents that show your right to be in the United States, always keep them with you and show the officer. Failure to show these documents could result in your arrest. Now, this last situation is a bit tricky. You shouldn't be so forthcoming to just show your green card or show this or show that. But if you feel like you're in a situation where it could de-escalate a situation or prevent your arrest or prevent your detention, which would be far worse, then perhaps in that situation, it would be better simply to provide those documents. But never the original. If you have copies, always better. You always want to keep your originals with you. So if you can make copies of your documents, that's always much better. Okay, so immigration detention. So what happens if you are unfortunately detained by ICE or another agency? Remain silent, and again, do not lie. Do not interrupt an arrest, and do not try to run. Again, you want to come off as non-threatening as possible. You want to build a record in your favor as much as possible. So simply vocally dissent from what is going on. Do not answer questions about where you're born or your immigration or criminal history. Do not provide information on where your loved one lives or where your loved ones live. Oftentimes, agents will try to elicit this information from you, but you do not want to give that up whatsoever, especially if your loved ones also are not citizens as well. Do not give ICE your documents, but again, like I mentioned in the previous slide, this is very much case specific. And so I can't give a one-off answer here as to whether, what one should do in every single situation, because there's too many different permutations. But again, if you feel like it would de-escalate the situation, perhaps provide a copy, but do not necessarily give out your originals. And this next point is very important. Do not sign anything. Keep whatever papers you are given by ICE. They will have important information to give you to you and your family. If they give you a notice to appear, for example, it will have very relevant information as to, again, your court date, why you can't stay in the United States, and you want to get that type of document, which again is called a notice to appear. We call it shorthand an NTA. You want to get that to an immigration attorney as soon as possible. They will be able to really dissect what's going on there and mount a good defense for you. Tell ICE if you or your loved ones had a medical issue or childcare. And if you are able to, write down what happens. Write down what happens. It could help your case. Or in the alternative, record what happens as well. But again, if you feel like an officer is being too hostile to recording, it may not be in your best interest. You may want to wait until later when you do have the ability to write something down and then write it down, or contact someone after the fact and then have them write it down. Okay, so what are your rights if you are detained? If you are arrested, you have a right to know why. You can simply ask the arresting officer or the detaining officer, why am I being detained? Why am I being arrested? You have the right to remain silent while detained. This is your right under the Fifth Amendment. You do not have to answer questions about your country of birth, your nationality, nor the manner in which you entered the United States. Remember, never say that you are an American citizen unless you are. Again, this may be a bit redundant, but this will have a very serious impact on your ability to apply for a green card or citizenship later if you falsely claim to be a U.S. citizen. You have the right to obtain the name, agency ID, and telephone number of any officer detaining you. You can simply ask the officer for this information, and they should be forthcoming enough to give it to you. Right. You have the right to consult with an attorney. But again, in immigration matters for non-citizens, that attorney will not be provided to you. You'll have to pay for one out of your own pocket. But something that ICE does when they give you a notice to appear in NTA, excuse me, they actually provide you a list, strangely enough, maybe kindly enough, of nonprofits in your area that provide services for free or for low cost that you can reach out to for your immigration matter. So if a relative is concerned about not being able to afford an attorney, ICE might actually provide them a list of very cheap attorneys or nonprofit organizations that can provide that assistance. Or you could simply on your own look for a nonprofit that could provide low cost assistance. Again, do not make any deals or sign any papers without understanding the consequences. Some penalties for criminal acts and some deals made with the police or prosecutor can have significant immigration consequences, including deportation or inability to return to the United States ever, even if the police officer, prosecutor, judge says that it will disappear from your record. This is a promise that's sometimes made to people that they'll be told that this will be sealed and no one will see it. But with regards to immigration procedures, that doesn't really matter as much. If there is a criminal history, it will come up. An immigration attorney can advise you fully about, again, your immigration risk. So if you do have an immigration issue, reach out to an immigration attorney immediately. Again, you also have the right to reach out to your consulate, and you have the right to ask for bond as well. So if you are detained, your immigration attorney or the attorney you hire can ask for bond from the immigration judge. If it's granted, your family can pay the bond and you'll be released. All right. What can you do if you and your family is detained? If you know someone who has been detained, you can help locate them by going to this website here. You can see it here. It's on the first bullet point. If you go to this website and then you type in the name of the person you're looking for, assuming the person who was detained gave the correct name, their actual name, you should be able to locate them immediately where they are. And so again, it's imperative that the person being detained give the correct name. Contact an immigration attorney in your area. Again, like I said, ICE can provide that list sometimes, or you can simply look for a nonprofit on your own. You can also contact a nationwide helpline to receive referrals anywhere in the country. The Immigrant Defense Project provides a criminal immigration helpline to provide limited legal advice and referrals to attorneys. If you find yourself or your loved one facing criminal or immigration proceedings and you do not know who to contact, please call this number. Again, leave your voicemail with your name and phone number, and they should be able to get back to you pretty quickly. They are pretty good with that. Okay, number 4 here, airport encounters. So when we go to the airport, when we go to the airport, Hopefully we'll be wrapping this up soon. When we go to the airport, normally you're not really going to see ICE there, and you won't see USCIS. Like I mentioned, they're the more paper guys. But who you will see are TSA and CBP. So TSA again, you can see the picture here. These are the guys that are going through your luggage or putting through the body detectors, or doing the wand over your body. So what the TSA can do, they can detain you briefly if they feel you are a security risk or if you are doing a specific illegal activity. They can ask you submit to a pat down. They can ask you to open your carry-on and search through your belongings, ask you about your citizenship, and where you're traveling. Again, they have quite a bit of discretion to do this, and so unless they're stating a blatantly illegal reason for doing so, they're more than likely going to be able to do those things that I just mentioned. However, what they cannot do is ask you personal questions without cause about your family, job, politics, or religion. Target you for more screening based on, again, race, ethnicity, or religion. If you are a U.S. citizen, again, this would just be illegal. They cannot handcuff you or strip search you without probable cause, and they cannot force you to submit to a pat down from someone from a different gender. So if you're, let's say, a Muslim woman and you are being subject to a pat down, you would simply ask for a female officer to pat you down. And Customs and Border Protection, again, what CBP can do at the airport. And again, the individual on the right, you see them when you come back into the US. They're taking your fingerprint, they're taking your picture, asking you a few questions about your trip normally, and sending you on your way. So, what can these people do? They can ask you about your citizenship, the purpose of your trip, countries you visited, and anything you're bringing back to the US. They can request valid documentation to verify travelers' identities, examine your baggage and everything in it, physically take electronic items, but they cannot force you to unlock them. So always request a receipt if they do take your item from you. Nor should you unlock these your personal electronics for them. What CBP cannot do, they cannot target you for more screening based on, again, race, ethnicity, or religion, which would be blatantly illegal. Ask you personal questions without cause about your family, job, politics, or religion. If you're a U.S. citizen, perform a strip search or body cavity search without reasonable suspicion, holds you for prolonged secondary screening without consulting an attorney. All right. Can I be detained? Can I be denied entry into the U.S. if I refuse a CBP agent's instructions? So U.S. citizens cannot, so we're going to talk about it in descending order from strongest to weakest case here. So U.S. citizens cannot be denied entry to the U.S. for refusing to produce passwords, provide device access, submit electronic devices for a search, or for refusing to answer questions unrelated to establishing a person's citizenship or identity. Again, U.S. citizens can never be denied entry into the U.S. It may cause you issues for not answering these questions, but it won't have any kind of immigration impact on you. LPRs, otherwise known as lawful permanent residents or green card holders, who have previously been admitted to the U.S. and have maintained their status, also cannot be denied entry generally. LPRs only have to answer questions establishing their identity and permanent residency, but refusal to answer will likely cause delay. Do not voluntarily give up your green card or sign anything without understanding. And non-citizen visa holders, so again, this would be the weakest category, may be denied entry into the U.S. for refusing to answer these questions. All right, part 5, our conclusion here. So whether you are a U.S. citizen, a green card holder, or a visa holder, you have rights when dealing with law enforcement and immigration officials. Depending on your status, the situation, and what agency you're dealing with, your rights may vary, but you still do have rights. And any questions?
Oh, I guess the privilege of the MC that he can ask the first question and maybe make some comments as well. Uh, there are a few points to really emphasize. One that Bilal told us, never sign papers, especially at the airport. We've had many complaints. I know in Ohio as well as in other chapters of CARE throughout the country, where especially elderly parents of U.S. citizens, the elderly parents who are green card holders, who have maintained their status as lawful permanent residents, but who travel often to the motherland, whether it is India, Pakistan, the Middle East, wherever they're from, when the elderly parents come back, it has happened where not ICE agents, I'm sorry, CBP, Customs and Borders Protection, the people who stamp your passports, will present them with a Form 407, and ask them to sign it. And they say, "Oh no, this is nothing. You'll be fine just if you sign this paper." And they actually mislead the permanent resident into signing this Form 407. Basically, when they sign this form, they are saying they're giving up their right, they're giving up their permanent residency status, and this can have devastating effects on families. You're here, your elderly parents are now no longer permanent residents. They have to fly back to the old country. So never ever sign any paper. You're not required to do that. This is one thing. One thing to do, especially if you are coming to the country, and you'll have CBP agents come in all kind of different colors, heights, and uniform. Sometimes they come to you in a jeans and a t-shirt, and they'll have a little badge that you can't really see and you can't really squint and look at, and they start talking to you. It's very important that you ask the agent, which agency do you work for? Who do you represent? I mean, if you're a CBP, yeah, you have the right to ask me certain questions. If they say, well, I'm with the FBI, you don't answer any questions. And that is the important point that repeatedly Bilal have talked about. Stay silent. Just don't answer questions. Don't answer questions. Now, the CBP can ask you certain questions, but if it is an FBI agent who's talking to you, and it has happened before, where a CBP would come and talk to you and say, "Oh, would you please sit here?" And then a minute later, another agent would come, and you don't know that the first agent was CBP. You don't know that the second agent is an FBI agent, and he doesn't need to disclose who he is. Start asking you questions, and then you'll find out they're not CBP. If they are CBP agents, if they're Customs and Borders Protection, they have the right to ask you certain questions. If they're and you have to answer these questions. If they are FBI agents, you don't need to say a word other than who you are, your name, and then ask for an attorney. I mean, and there is no exception to that rule. You do not talk to an FBI agent. And if I make any mistake, I'm sure Bilal is going to correct me. We say do not sign any paper. When you evoke the right to remain silent, which is your right to remain silent, don't walk back that. Don't change your mind and then start talking, because some of the training that they go through as agents, whether they're CBP, whether they're FBI, is, you say, I would like to remain silent. I don't want to talk about this, or I invoke my right to remain silent. And they say, oh yeah, I appreciate that and I understand. And then they're trained to keep talking to you. All of a sudden you find yourself actually talking, or feeling that embarrassed that you're being rude by not talking, or you're just, I mean, he keeps asking the same question, and you keep repeating that you want to remain silent, and then you find yourself answering. So when you evoke your right to remain silent, actually remain silent. And I'll end with that, my comments. And we have the first question we have was, dual citizens, should you use your country of birth passport or your other passport when exiting the United States? That was the first question. And I believe you don't need to use a passport to exit the country anyway. So the answer, you don't need a passport to exit the country. You need an ID to get to the airport, right? But I'll let Bilal answer that question. Go ahead. You're muted, Bilal.
My apologies. If I understood the question correctly, it's what passport should they be using upon exiting the country if they're a dual citizen of the US and another country. Um, in this particular case, it's better to use your U.S. nationality. Like if you're traveling overseas and let's say you're going back to your country of origin, there's no particular benefit to be using your own original country of origin passport. You can just travel on your U.S. passport. If anything, it makes a better travel record for you. Um, and so I would recommend traveling with your U.S. passport.
You stated do not unlock the device if CP persist. Then what? And I think that is a very important question.
Yeah. If CBB persists, my best advice is simply do not cave to their request. If they get aggressive and they want to grab your phone and they want to take it, again, never under any circumstance do you want to be resisting them physically. If they want to grab it, if they want to keep it for as long as they want to, that's on them. As long as you evoke your right and create some kind of record of you evoking that right, that's all you can really do in that situation. But the second you open it, you've actually given them consent to search through your device, and then they can access your material, download it, and do whatever they want with it. So do not consent. I know it's very scary in the situation. You know, you're in a room, they're being aggressive, but once you give them that consent, the passcodes to your device or something like that, it's theirs to keep. All right. And also on this note, if you are traveling, do turn off any kind of facial recognition because they could simply hold your phone to your face and get access to your phone. You can do encryption as well. So these things help you travel more safely.
Right. But if you refuse to give them the password to your device, they have the right to take your device, right?
Um, well, it's not that they have the right to necessarily take your device. If they take it, that's on them. And what they do with it, it's on them. At that point, you simply have to ask for a receipt. If they want to take it, again, it's on them, but they don't have a right to your password. That's one thing for certain. All right. They may have to explain later on why they took your device, but they'll never have a reason for asking for access to that device. I know that distinction may seem a bit odd, but just remember that if they want to take it, it's on them, but they never, under any circumstance, should have access to your passwords.
But basically, you have not consented. So if they are able to crack your phone open, then you have not consented anyway to that search. Is that correct? Is that basically what you're saying? That
Yeah. So
it's on them, but I mean, it seems that the law is that they have the ability, the authority to take your device away from you and then try to crack it open. That's the understanding. Is that correct?
so I've seen in one situation where someone did not consent to their electronic device. It was a laptop being searched. It was taken, um, and the individual in question didn't know what happens to their laptop. But when it was finally returned to him, it was just completely broken. So whether or not they got the information from that laptop, no, we don't. We never actually figured it out. But they did destroy his laptop in the process of trying to get it. So.
Okay. All right. We have a question. Please speak about using burner phones and disabling face recognition, which you addressed already. People should disable facial recognition. But what about using burner phones?
Again, a burner phone would be a healthy precaution because again, you wouldn't have any uh, information on there other than just using the phone to call people. So if an individual did want to take the extra precautionary step of getting a burner phone, I wouldn't necessarily see an issue with that.
Okay. A question. As a US citizen, if they ask to search my phone, what should I do?
Uh,
Basically, I guess the question, search my phone, means they ask for the password or they want to take the phone away. If they want to take it, they can take it, but you're saying don't give up the password.
yes, that's correct. They want to take it, let them take it, but don't give them the password yet.
And what about, and this is maybe this is more of a technical question. If somebody uses for a password basically a four-digit number or six-digit number, it seems that, or our understanding about the technology is this is an easy to crack phone, but if you use a very complicated password, then it will be nearly impossible for them to crack, especially an iPhone. Is that correct or is that wrong?
Um, I believe what you're saying is simply a longer password is better than a shorter one, in which case I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. So if yeah, if you want to create a more difficult password or have like multiple different passwords, I know some phones allow for that, or again passwords for different apps as well, then I wouldn't see an issue with that. This is another extra layer of protection.
Right. And one thing for people who travel overseas and come back, it will be this is not a legal advice, but just a best practice to before coming into the country, log out of your social media apps, then delete your social media apps. So your phone will show a record that there was a social media app here, but no one can sign into it. Uh, uh, so log out of the social media app, delete the social media app, and bring your phone. So if somebody cracks your phone or if they take your phone away, then they don't have access to all your social media. Because if they open your phone and your social media is on the phone, then it is open also and it will be accessible. So that is one thing. Another point, and it is really important to emphasize here. While they might have access to your phone and they can search your phone if they take it and they're able to crack it open, what they don't have the right, I mean, and this is, they have the right to do that. Basically, they are within their authority before you enter into the country. Your passport is stamped. They are within their authority to take your phone and search your phone. What they're going to do with the information and how usable it is, that's a different story. But the one thing that they don't have either way the right to access is your clouds. So if you back up your social media into your cloud, iCloud account or whatever cloud storage that you use, and then you delete your social media app, you still have access to that data in the cloud, and they don't have access to it except by going to a court and obtaining a search warrant for your cloud storage. So if you back everything up into the cloud and delete it off your phone and put a strong password on your phone, this is a very good way to protect your data. How long can they keep your phone if they take it from you?
That's a great question. I've seen phones taken for a few hours. This individual who I referenced earlier, who lost his laptop. I want to say it was a few weeks. So I can't really give you a timeline about how long they're going to keep it. So I apologize. I can't answer that question directly.
Yeah, and if they had the history of if it is a difficult password, they will keep the phone longer because it just takes them that much longer. Uh, but typically it is few weeks, and they send it to you by UBS. And always they will always give you, but if they don't, you should ask for a receipt that they have taken or confiscated your electronic devices. A question, could you please repeat the answer regarding giving passwords for electronic devices, cell phone, laptops, etc.?
So no worries. I've no problem repeating myself. Just to state it very very clearly, do not give them access. Do not give them your passwords to your electronic devices. Just simple as that.
Do not give the password.
Do not give the password. Yes.
Yes. A question, how can I contact CAIR if I run into any issues at the Houston airport upon my return to the US?
I believe that's more a question for you, brother Khalid.
Well, but I mean, if you are, that really depends. I mean, because at CARE, at the portal, whether the Houston chapter, which is the very fine chapter, or the CARE Ohio chapter in Columbus, Cincinnati, and Dayton, or any other chapter, you can. I mean, usually you would come to our portal on our website and log in a complaint or log in an intake, if you will. I would advise people who are traveling and who have issues to really try to connect with us directly and to tell us about their situation. Because once you are into the at the airport, and if CBP takes you aside and they say, "Well, we need to, you need to wait here," they take you to a waiting area. Usually, they don't allow you to use the phone unless you are detained. If you're detained, then you have the right to call an attorney, and then you should call CARE and make sure before you travel you take the number, and preferably if you take the cell number of somebody from the CARE chapter where you are from, so that they can follow up with you so contacting CARE is depend really. If you're being detained, that is one thing. If you are being just told to wait, and while you're waiting they don't let you use your phone, that is a different story. The best thing is to pre-arrange these things if you anticipate any problems. uh, what are they looking for in our personal phone and laptop? Should we delete things in our phones or computers before we travel?
That's another great question. Again, that's very case specific. With one individual that could be looking for one thing, maybe pro-Palestinian sentiment. For another individual that could be going through their phone to get to someone else. That's too case specific for me to answer, but just depend on the person.
Yeah. What was that question again? What was the question that the person just asked? It disappeared from here and I forgot it.
I can't see the questions actually
Okay,
on.
What
that is
are they looking for in our personal phone and laptop? Should we delete things in our phones
yeah.
or computers before we travel?
It is. If you delete things, yeah, that's what I wanted to answer. If you delete things and they have your phone, they can actually undelete things, so they can recover things that are deleted. So deleting things is not going to solve the problem. If you have social media and you're concerned about social media posts or personal information that you might have on your social media, the best thing to do is to log out of that social media, delete it off your phone, because what they'll have there, I mean, if they recover data on your phone, they'll recover the fact that, let's say, Facebook was here. But if they reinstall Facebook, it will require them to log in to your account, and unlikely, hopefully, they will not be able to do that. So uh, that's the best practice. What data they're looking for, what information? It is like when you talk to an FBI agent or to a police officer, anything you say can and will be used against you. So anything they found in your phone, they can and they will use against you if it is convenient for them, for whatever reason. It depends, of course, it is case specific. So don't have anything there that someone can use uh, against you. I'll give you an example, a personal example. I was flying into Heathrow Airport, and Europe and the UK have much more stricter laws when it comes to taking your electronics away. If you refuse to give them your password, they can actually prosecute you and you can go to jail. And they give you the law, basically the legal document that says this is really their right and according to the laws in the UK. When and of course I had to give them my password. They look at the phone and there were pictures of victims of bombings, Israeli bombings of in Palestine. I think at the time it was even in the West Bank, and the pictures were, they were just like somebody was taking pictures in the hospital or somewhere where the children were killed by the Israeli bombing, and they came to me and they say, did you take this picture? I said, no, I didn't. How did you get this picture? I said, my God, somebody sent it to me on social media. And they were asking me specifically about pictures of the children. They want to know if I was there. and I think that is so if I did not have the right answer, that can be trouble. And that takes me to a point, a very important point that Bilal said. I can't emphasize this enough. Never ever lie to a federal agent, because lying to a federal agent actually is a federal crime. Now, somebody say, well, I never lie. I'm not going to lie. Well, what if you say something that you might have forgotten? They say, when did you travel? And you said, I traveled on Wednesday. And you traveled on Thursday. So did you lie or did you forget? Well, you forgot. How does the government know that you forgot? And if they say, no, you didn't forget, you were lying. And you're lying because of you just wrote a text. I have your phone. You wrote a text that I traveled on Thursday. So why are you telling me you travel on Wednesday? Something as simple as that, of course, can be more complicated. So the best thing is you never talk, because if you don't talk, you can't lie. But if you speak, then there is a chance that you lie either by commission, by omission, or an error. And either way, you are in trouble if you lie. So the best thing is not to talk. The question was, how long can the TSA keep one for questioning?
Uh,
Until you miss your flight, I guess.
uh, and again, that's largely discretionary and up to the TSA. These would all be, again, very kind of case specific situations. And so it's very difficult for me to say how long they would keep one individual versus another. It would depend what the level of interest is. To think one person is, trying to smuggle a little bit of extra liquid in versus another person is trying to smuggle, weapons in. It depends what their interest is in the person, and what they think they're doing, and that'll dictate how long TSA wants to hold them. So again, I apologize. I can't answer that question too directly as to the exact time.
Yeah, this is an important question that we have here. What if FBI agent or an FBI agent is there and the Border Patrol asks questions? What can we do now, if any? So, a CBP officer, Customs and Borders Protection officer, who is a federal agent, is there, and next to him is sitting an FBI agent, and the CBP is asking you questions. I'll let Bilal answer that, but it would just with a caveat. What are the questions that a CBP officer can ask you, and what are the questions they cannot ask you? The questions they ask you are the questions that are on the declaration form. What countries have you traveled to? Are you bringing in more than $10,000 in the US? Were you on a farm with livestock? Are you bringing any seeds or any microbe agents? Are you bringing food and fruits and things like that? So these are the questions that they're allowed to ask you. Now, if they want to ask you what is the name of your mother-in-law, I mean, unless you don't like her, you should not give them that answer, because it is really not their discretion to ask you about the name of your mother-in-law. So go ahead, Bilal. I mean, is that correct? Can people, uh, because you mentioned in your presentation that uh, um,
I can actually go back here to the CBP
no,
slide.
no. It's the one thing that I thought was really important as you're answering, as you were making your presentation is, when without cause. You said you should not answer any questions. The questions you should not answer without cause. So if they ask me about my mother-in-law's name, what would there be a cause for them to ask me questions outside of the customs declaration? The 14, 15 questions about the countries you visited, if you're bringing seeds or fruits or vegetables, or if you were in the proximity of livestock. What cause would where they can ask questions out of that scope?
Also, if I could add just one more thing to that, it would also depend on your status, right? A U.S. citizen has much more ability to refuse to answer questions versus, as I mentioned on the slides, someone who's just a visa holder, J1, F2, B1, B2. They're more CBP has more discretion on asking those questions because they're trying to figure out what this person is trying to why this person is trying to get into this country. Whereas with a citizen or a green card holder, they already have a right to be here, right? So with, let's say, a visa holder, again, there can be more discretion on asking kind of more probing questions about your family, your politics, so on and so forth, versus a citizen or a green card holder.
So they do not have the right to ask you about your politics, your religion, your faith, your practice, your charity, and all of that. CBP doesn't. So if an FBI agent is there with a borders person, the CBP officer, you still don't need to answer questions other than the ones that are on the customs declaration. And if they're probing further, then obviously with the FBI agent there, I mean, for sure, federal agencies cooperate with each other, but with the agent there present, you don't need to be answering questions. Is that correct, Bilal?
Well, the FBI agent being there in and of itself, I don't think necessarily changes the scenario that much. I mean, they're both federal agents, so the FBI agent's not saying anything. It's actually probably to your benefit that they're being quiet. So, yeah.
But you still don't answer questions. I
Uh,
mean, we say there's no exception that you don't answer an FBI agent's question without the presence of an attorney. So if they are there and somebody else is asking the question and they are there taking notes, you still don't want to answer questions. Is that correct?
um, so I'll be very honest. I would have to look into that dynamic specifically a little bit more. I can't give a 100% answer off the top of my head. So I can, to the individual, perhaps I can get back to them at a later date.
Yeah, brother Muhammad, just text me your email and we'll get back to you. This is uh, you're asking trick question here.
No, it's good.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah. Do you recommend long, complex passwords? I have heard police have tech, Israeli tech, that guesses passwords and short ones are faster to crash. This is more of a technical question, but you can give it a take a crack at it. No pun intended, brother Bilal.
I think, like I'd mentioned earlier, I guess common sense would dictate a longer password is harder to bypass than a shorter one. But I'm no tech expert, so I can't really speak
Yeah.
in depth about that.
Yeah, mentioning that if it is they have the technology to guess passwords. Yeah, I mean if you put your address like your house number and your street and then that is your password, that's guessable. But if you use alphanumeric and symbols, you can't guess that. You have to really run it through the algorithm that tries every possible passwords, and the more complex it is, the much harder, exponentially harder for them to guess it or to crack your phone. So a complex password uh, with that is alphanumeric with symbols and yeah, like the dot or the at or the exclamation mark or the question mark. These kind of things will make it definitely almost impossible to guess. So they have to run it through an algorithm. Okay, do you have the right to ask about your donation? Do they have the right to ask about your donations or relationship to charity organizations if you are a U.S. citizen?
Again, that would seem to fall out of the peer review. I mean, I guess it would depend on who you're talking about here. Are you talking about when you're?
CBP. They're talking about at the borders.
Yeah, if it's at the border, then no. There's no reason for them to be asking that question.
And even outside of the borders, they definitely don't have the right to ask questions about that. I mean, unless you are being investigated, and then you have the right to an attorney. But at the borders, if they ask you at the borders, you don't need to answer that question about charity giving. I mean, really, the guideline, and correct me, Brother Bilal, the guideline is to answer questions that are on the customs declaration. Anything outside of that becomes, why are you asking these questions? I mean, an example of that, they'll ask somebody, who did you visit while you were overseas? And you say, I visited my siblings. And they say, what are their names? This is one, they don't have the right to ask you that. Then you say, okay, here are their names. And they ask you, what are their spouse's name? Oh, so and so, is he married? Yes. What is his spouse's name? And then You say, okay, let me go along. You give them that answer and they say, what do they do for a living? I mean, like CBP is asking these questions. Definitely they don't have the right to ask these questions. And the best thing is to just answer the questions that are in the declaration. Anything outside of that, would you say, Brother Bilal, it is safe to say you're not going to answer?
Yeah, that's a relatively kind of safe guideline. Whatever CBP wants to ask you is more or less on the declaration form. And those general questions they normally ask you when you're coming in.
Right.
Where did you travel? How long were you there? What are you bringing in? Again, that would all be on the declaration anyway. So
There's one thing that I've noticed, Brother Bilal, is that people who are really educated, people who are US citizens, who've been citizens for many, many years, somehow they feel that somewhat intimidated to tell a CBP agent is I don't answer questions. And that is the best thing to the best answer or the format by which you respond to a question that is not within that declaration form. If they ask you about your charity or about your masjid or about your practice, is to say, I don't answer questions. And then they keep asking you questions, and I find some people either intimidated or shy or feel they're being rude to say, I don't answer questions. Or they feel that if I say I don't answer questions, then that's going to get me in trouble. If you are a US citizen coming back to the United States, you have an absolute right. I don't believe there's an exception that you have an absolute right to go home. I mean, unless you're detained and they want to put you under arrest, that's a different story. But if they're going to ask you a question about your faith, about your charity, about your siblings, about your family, about your practices, and you refuse to answer that, they cannot stop you from going to your house. Not answering questions, don't ever feel intimidated or shy about refusing to answer questions at the borders as you're coming into the United States. Is that accurate, Brother Bilal?
yeah, I mean, it's very intimidating to say no to federal agents. They come in their official looking outfits and they have maybe a sidearm and there's multiple of them. Obviously, it's very difficult to say no, but if you have a right to say no, and it's to your benefit, then invoke it. No.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you have that right, you have that right, and they can't take it away from you. And they'll try to kind of skirt around it, but you should never be intimidated. This is a question: if you resist ICE or CBP at the airport on the basis of the Fifth Amendment, what are the repercussions if later on? Will you be placed on a blacklist or be secondary screened every time you travel?
Uh,
You resist, you don't mean physically resist. I think you resist mean you refuse to answer. I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead. This is yeah,
I guess I'm not sure what he means. Does he mean physically resist? In which case, you absolutely never physically resist. Physically,
absolutely. You're right.
but just maybe following it down this kind of path. If you do physically resist an officer, which again is the incorrect thing to do, that will have a negative impact on your immigration status, or if you're a U.S. citizen, it could lead to criminal charges outside of the immigration sphere.
And ICE would not be at the airport anyway. It will be CBP. So if you're being approached by ICE, then you, there must be a different story. They don't approach a U.S. citizen. They should not approach a U.S. citizen. I mean, they might, but they're not usually at the airport. But not answering questions to ICE should never have any ramification. CBB is the same, but you need to answer the questions about that are on the declaration and familiarize yourself with it. It's very basic questions. Countries you've been to, amount of money you're bringing, amount of gifts you're bringing, if you've been in the proximity of livestock, if you're bringing seeds or fruits or things like that. But nothing about your personal life, nothing about your faith, about your family, about your charity or anything like that. Let's move on. Do we delete social media when leaving or when we're coming back to the US?
Again, these are very kind of specific, person to person type of um scenarios. You also have to keep in mind most people's electronics are not being taken when they're entering and exiting the country. And so if you feel perhaps that you're not one of those people who's going to have any issue, maybe there's no reason for you to be deleting your social media. Maybe if your social media isn't controversial, there isn't a specific reason for you to get rid of it. But if you do want to take an extra precaution and you do want to delete it, I don't see a reason why you can't. But again, that's up to your personal discretion.
Yeah, and when I mentioned that about deleting social media, I was saying this is not a legal advice. It is more of a practical advice. If you feel that your social media might be too much for the stomach of a CBP agent, then log out, delete it off your device, and when you come back, you can reinstall it, and you wouldn't lose anything. And everything we're talking about is when coming back into the United States. We're not talking about when you're leaving. You're leaving that, you can be going to different countries. Different countries have different rules and regulations. So, but we're talking about everything that we have said so far applies to when you are coming into the United States. What about WhatsApp? If someone is on multiple groups that active about political matters, that's what we're talking about, social media. Go ahead, brother Bilal.
Again, that's a great question. But it kind of falls into the previous answer that I just gave, in that it's very much discretionary as to whether or not you want to get rid of your social media because you feel it may hinder you. And I think Brother Khalid made a good um, um, point at the beginning of this talk today, that there's a fine line between fear mongering and education. We want to educate everyone, of course, but we also don't want everyone to be thinking CBP is going to grab everyone's phones and be going through their social media and entering their WhatsApp chats and things like this. Most travelers really don't have a problem, but in the event you do have a problem, we want you to be appraised of these rights.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you don't have, that's another question. If you don't have any social media, etc., on my phone, is it okay to open my phone if they ask?
Um, um, that's an interesting question. Most people aren't too willing to want to give up their phone. But again, let's say you don't have any social media, or you don't have any political, group chats that you're in, or so on and so forth, on WhatsApp or Telegram. They could still download all your contact information. They could have access to all your emails. And I don't think that the individual asking this question would want the government to have access to them. So
Or even text messages, or I mean, just anything that is on your phone. Doesn't have to be social media. Your contacts, your text messaging. If you have your email on your phone, even your pattern of sites you visit, etc., etc. They'll have more information about you than you care for the government to have. So the best thing, I would not give up my password or my phone. I mean, if they want to take it, they can take it. I'm not gonna resist, but I wouldn't give up my password. Could you please repeat answer on presenting dual passport for dual citizens? Okay.
I think we're coming full circle here. Yeah. So that was the first question. Again, it's just better to travel on your U.S. passport if you're a U.S. citizen. It's easier for the U.S. government to track. Nothing looks suspicious. Just you're entering and exiting with one passport, no problems.
One thing, if you choose to travel, for example, if like you travel to your other country that you're from, if you use your U.S. passport, which is like Bilal said, that's what he advises. They might charge you $50 for a visa, and you want to save that $50, and you have the right to do that, and you want to use your other passport. Well, use the other passport. The most important thing, when you come back and they say what countries you visited, you'll say exactly the countries that you visited. Let's say you went to Hajj, and then you went to another country, and then you went to your own country, the third country that you visited, or the fourth, and you used your passport there at that country of second citizenship. When they ask you about the countries that you have visited, you have to disclose all the countries that you have visited regardless what passport you use to enter any one of these countries. So if because they're asking you what countries you visited. They're not asking you what countries you visited in a US passport or on which passport. So what countries you visited, you disclose all the countries you visited. You don't lie about any of that, or you don't miss any of that, whether lying, commission or omission. Make sure that you know exactly which country you visited and disclose that. One person who was out of the country for 10 years, US citizen, fully bona fide American citizen who was out of the country living overseas for like 10 years. Over this 10 years, he visited probably 20 different countries. And he started writing down all the countries. And he said, listen, you guys, to the best of my recollection, these are all the countries that I've visited. If I've missed any, and he wrote on the form, because they have to write on and say, this is to the best of my recollection, because he visited so much, he was in Europe all over the place, and just did not want to miss any country, because you miss one country and they are going after you, they'll accuse you of flying. They wouldn't say, yeah, you visited 19 and you listed 18, so we'll let you pass. No, it just, so you've got to be really, really careful with that. How should we respond if we are asked about points not related to the trip, like belief, race, etc.?
Well, that's again, that's a good question. Just you could simply state that I refuse to answer those questions because they're simply not relevant, or something to that effect.
Yeah, just I don't answer questions. If they ask you about your faith or your race, or what do you think about this, or what do you think about that, say, when I get home, if you want to invite me to Dunkin' Donuts and coffee, nah, really refuse to answer these questions. This is none of their business. About your race, your faith, what you think about this or what you think about that is completely irrelevant, and you should never ever answer these questions. We've had, especially after the genocide that is ongoing in Palestine, we've had people who come back into the country and, what do you think about, like, what do you care what I think? What I think is what I think. That is for me, not for you to know. It's like, do you believe in God? Well, it's none of your business if I believe in God. So your thoughts and your beliefs, or what you think about things, is really none of their business, and you should be very adamant, should never ever relent on that. Be very adamant. What you think about this is just none of their business, and take it from me. You can tell them it is none of your business what I believe about this, that, or the other. I mean, you always want to be polite, but if they're being jerks and they are really pushing your buttons, and you want to tell them it's none of their business, you still have the right to say that. And that takes me to the other right that impeded in this question. What if if I have a lot of pro-Palestinian material on my phone, I'm guessing?
Wait, sorry, was that another question?
Yeah, what if I have a lot of pro-Palestinian material?
Again, there's nothing inherently dangerous about this material for most people. Most people should be able to travel without CPP going through their phone. But again, if someone wants to take an extra precaution because they feel like, I don't feel comfortable having this information in the event that I am stopped, or something to that effect, then there's nothing wrong with simply removing that information from your phone.
Correct, but it's still within your right as First Amendment right to express yourself, and to have pro-Palestinian material, pro-Kashmiri material, whatever you want, pro-Real Madrid material. I mean, I think every answer that we have given, whether not to give up your password or not to answer questions, applies regardless, really, whether it is pro-Palestinian or whatever it is, that if you don't want to give up your password for your phone or your electronic devices, you should not give that up anyway, regardless. And pro-Palestinian, how much is too much pro-Palestinian? Is like one post or 20 posts? Who cares? I mean, who really cares if that federal agent thinks that 15 posts is too much or 1,500 posts is too much? So the best thing is to really stick to the answers that we have given. What is a burner phone? A burner phone is, if you have seen Breaking Bad, you would know what a burner phone is. It is a phone that you use just for one time, basically, that doesn't have all your data and all your contacts and all your social media. It is a phone you use as a phone. You use it just for travel or for just in case they take your phone away, they don't have all of your search history and all of the conversations and all of the posts that you have back and forth on WhatsApp on different social media and different applications. So that is a burner phone would not have these applications. Use it when you travel, and when you come back, you kind of throw it away or you sell it or you just put it aside for traveling. Would it be beneficial to have a burner phone in hand with us and our actual phone packed in our luggage? Well, if they search your luggage, if they take you aside and they want to search you, they're going to search your luggage, and if they find your phone, they're going to ask you for the password. So but it's to your discretion. I've heard that CPP has asked people questions regarding their job and how they have income. Oh my God. What should we do if this happens? I'm not gonna tell you what I think you should do, but I'll tell you what you should do. Don't answer these questions. Bilal, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, very much agree. It's kind of in line with, I think, what another individual asked earlier. Again, this information is not relevant to you re-entering the United States. There's no reason for them to be asking it. You know, what does your income matter when you're coming back in the U.S.?
Or what your faith matter, or the friends that you have, or the charity that you donate to. Every charity you donate to in the United States obviously is a charity that has been authorized and approved by either the local, the state, or the federal government for them to collect funds. So this is on them if they have an issue with the charity. For that person to ask you about the charity, I think it is none of their business, and you should not answer any of these questions. How will how will my social media uh, content impact my USCIS application for naturalization, lawful permanent resident via marriage? That's a very good and important question.
It's, no, that's a great question, and it's a very relevant one, but it's very case specific. I would have to know more about that individual, the marriage, the pro-Palestinian content, the activity, where they're from. It's too much. It's too much. There's too much missing for me to answer that question appropriately. So I apologize. If that individual were to come in, or perhaps set up.
Yeah, yeah. How will my social media content impact my USCIS? Which means that I think that is not about travel. I'm guessing Sister Asma who's asking the question it is not necessarily about travel, but that USCIS can go and track your social media, which I think nowadays they are. And I think, yeah, I guess it is
I'll,
specific.
I'll say this generally, because again, I don't want to get too much in this to the specific of the situation, but it is a great question. A great question. So if this person does want to reach out to us later, more than happy to sit down and talk about it. But I will say this generally: when you're doing your N400 for naturalization, your social media is not really coming up on the form. It's not coming up at the interview. So if you're just kind of a run-of-the-mill Muslim who has pro-Palestinian sentiments, I can't imagine it being a problem generally, but that doesn't mean it applies to every case specifically. But it's a fair question.
Okay. Okay, and we're gonna take these two more questions and then we're gonna wrap it up because we are at 8:30. If they succeed in cracking your password when you refuse to give it, is this an illegal search?
Again, that's a very good question. That comes down to their reason for wanting to go through your phone. So again, that's very case specific as to whether or not they had a right to access that information. But that's a good question.
So would you say it is, the question, is it illegal search? The fact that they have not entered the US yet, their passport has not been stamped, and they have taken away their phone or the person's phone, is that search I mean, the reason they're asking originally, when the law was passed for them to be able to take your password and take your phone, was uh, their argument was that the Fourth Amendment does not apply to you if you are not in the United States. And if your passport has not been stamped and you have not actually entered the United States, then the Fourth Amendment does not apply to you. So does that change the answer about the illegal search? Because for it to be an illegal search is for you to be in the US, not outside of the US. And if you have not crossed over that counter where the passport is stamped or the officer says, welcome home, then technically, according to the law when it was passed, technically you're not in the US and the Fourth Amendment does not apply to you.
I would have to look into that more,
Okay.
just to get to the bottom of that. So I don't have an answer right now.
Okay, great. Uh, okay, the question is really a repeat. We'll answer this and then we'll ask the last question and then we'll call it a day. On responding to CBP officers, do we just say, I do not wish to answer this question if it has nothing to do with my trip?
Again, so as a general rule of life, be polite. Say, I don't feel like this question is relevant, and I don't feel comfortable answering it, and I don't want to answer it. And again, very case dependent how they're gonna. Maybe they'll ask you again. Maybe they won't. It just depends. But I would refuse in the nicest way possible first.
Yeah. I am a British American dual citizen. I've worked as a humanitarian worker in multiple countries affected by war, including several Muslim countries with history of terrorism. Would you consider it safe for me to travel?
Um, Again, these are I've done a lot of these know your rights workshops, and these Q&As tend to collapse into very specific questions with a few facts. Um, it's hard for me to say. I would have to know a lot more about your travel history, the nature of your work, your age, your marital status, do you have children, so on and so forth. And so I apologize to this individual. I can't answer their
Yeah.
question.
Well, if a general rule, if the person is an American citizen, I'm guessing, is it safe to travel back into the US? If that is the question, if a person who is American and British citizen who've worked for multiple humanitarian organizations, is it safe for them to travel back to the United States? I mean, an American citizen want to travel back to the United States, if we take that part of the question.
If yeah, if it's just traveling back to the U.S. And thank you maybe for segmenting that question, Brother Khalid. Yeah, as an American, as we talked about in the slideshow here, that they cannot deny you entry into the United States if you're an American. You have the right to re-enter the United States. Whether or not they want to hassle you at the airport is completely dependent on them. But you have a right to be here, and they can't deny that to you.
Yes, I'm a green card holder via marriage, and I will travel overseas in June. Can they refuse my re-entry to the US?
So potentially yes. But again, I'm dead. That's because a green card holder isn't technically a citizen, and it is discretionary. It can be denied re-entry into the U.S., but they would have to have a very serious reason for denying a green card holder re-entry into the U.S. Maybe I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like I mentioned in one of the slides towards the end of the slideshow here, that for citizens and green card holders, you're basically kind of guaranteed. U.S. citizens are guaranteed a re-entry. Green card holders are basically guaranteed re-entry, but it's just the visa holders in that bottom category that CBP has a lot of discretion on whether or not to deny them. But to this individual specifically, I would have to know their country of origin, how they got their green card, so on and so forth.
But generally speaking, a green card holder who has already established residency in the United States, which means that they're not coming to the US for the first time after receiving a green card stamp on their passport, or they're coming as an immigrant for the first time. If they already have established residency and they've been living in the United States and they travel outside of the United States and they want to come back, can they deny them entry? And the answer is potentially, but with very much difficulty. Is that correct? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Because there have been cases where they actually deny a person to board an airplane to come back to the United States, and they have a green card. They were green card holders, and they revoked their green card. And that person from outside the United States sued in the United States, and the government reinstated their green card and allow them to come back to the United States because denying them entry into the country, even though they are an established green card holder, a permanent resident, legal permanent resident, the government couldn't win, and the person was very, very politically active, even as a green card holder, was, I mean, in your face active person in a very hot political environment. They were denied entry, and then when they sued, they came back, and the federal court said that the government could not deny them entry if they are permanent, lawful permanent resident, without basically taking them to an immigration court and showing the reason why the government need to revoke their permanent residency status. While they might be able to do that now, but really the threshold is higher. The lowest threshold, like Bilal said, was for visa holders, whether it is H1, H2, B1, B2 visas, and these kind of things, right? I guess we still have some. My God, I mean, we really appreciate people who are sticking with us and hanging on. We really appreciate your participation and these amazing, wonderful questions that you have asked. All of it is relevant. All of it is really important. Few repeats, very few repeats. I mean, this is usually there'll be a whole lot more repeats, but this is timely, important. Being aware, being confident of your rights, being aware of your rights is the first step in asserting these rights and defending your rights. So especially for American citizens. It really was disheartening for me to hear some American citizens who are asking questions about not sure that if they are going to be allowed back in the country. For God's sake, you're an American citizen. Assume you've been paying a lot of taxes here and you've been investing so much into this country, and for you to think, just even thinking that you might not be allowed to come to your home, I think this is devastating, and I think that's what makes these kind of workshops really important for all of us to have, and for us really to conduct these things. Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR in Ohio and nationally are really in the forefront of that line of defense for our civil liberty, for our civil rights, whether it is political, whether it is as immigrants or citizens and permanent residents, and even people who are on visas. And we have seen some wins in the different courts. We've had the professor from Georgetown was released recently. I mean, if you listen to the government, you think this guy was Charles Manson. I mean, he just like, oh, get rid of this person. And then 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, a month and a half later, the government loses the case and the person had to be released. I mean, when you have a professor at Georgetown, one of the most prestigious universities in the United States, who's doing postdoctoral studies on conflict resolution and then get picked up by ICE. You know, this is really a very, very bad optics for the United States of America, and ICE and the government is losing these battles, and we hope they will continue to lose these battles, trying to infringe on the rights of people who are in the country legally, who are educated, who are doing good work and good things in the United States. Thank you again. Thank you, Brother Bilal. We'll be seeing more of Bilal, like I told you, and we look forward to that, and we look forward to more workshops and more knowledge about our rights, more KYR seminars, and with that, we uh, say a dua. So, Brother Bilal, go ahead and conclude with a quick dua for us, inshallah.
Um, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make the affairs of Muslims everywhere easy. May He rectify the situation of Muslims, in particular in conflict zones, whether it's Kashmir, Palestine, Sudan, Yemen, Syria. May He make us in the United States, the Muslim community, a beacon for Muslims around the world. May He allow us to use our privilege here in the United States to assist our Muslims around the world in need. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And we'll see you in the next seminar. Assalamu alaikum.